How can we use food to heal ourselves?
Food is literally making up every cell of our bodies. Everything has a cost, and we've got to understand the difference between real food nutrition and the synthetic versions of things. Only about 30% of families are eating together. My question was, has this caused a problem for our health? Our social ties, having strong, healthy social connections, led to a 50% reduction in all-cause mortality.
Wow. Well, I'm really excited to have you here because, well, any chance I get to hang with you is a momentous occasion in and of itself. Off the bat, though, I love to start high level and just dive right in for my audience because I know that attention is sort of like the new limited resource these days. How can we use food to heal ourselves? How can we transform our health with food?
Yeah, I always I love that, zooming out and really looking at the big picture here. Like, why does food matter so much? And I've really been working to impress this upon our culture. And we're going to talk about culture a lot today, by the way, because it's informing so many of the decisions that we make. But the first step is really realizing that food is literally making up every cell of our bodies, right? So every single one of our organelles, whether it's the mitochondria, whether it's the membrane around our cells, it's all made from food. Also, the information that's getting passed around by our cells, the hormones and neurotransmitters, enabling our cells to have communication, it's all made from food. And so a couple of good examples, we've both got friends who are gastroenterologists, like award-winning, all the accolades, and they'll go to school for maybe 12 years and have maybe the accumulation of maybe a couple of months of nutrition education. And it's nothing in regards to actually helping to treat the patient. It's like rare things, like if your patient, if they have a rare B12 deficiency, give them this supplement kind of thing. And so this is a field of science and medicine. Their focus is addressing the organs that deal with the assimilation, digestion, and elimination of food. And they don't know anything about food. They're not taught anything about food. It's just like, how is that even possible? And by the way, so diving in one more angle with this, I've got great friends who are award-winning cardiologists. And when they're looking at their patient's blood work and their patient's heart health, they're completely absent to the fact that that heart that they're looking at is made from the food that their patient has eaten. It is a primary factor in our health. And so they're not understanding really, like, if they're looking at the content of their blood, that blood is made from their food. The arteries themselves, the capillaries, it's all made from food. And so we're really missing the biggest piece of human health, which is like, what are you literally making your body out of? And not just that, what are you fueling everything with? And so if we start there and like have that flip switched in our minds, like, I get to choose what I'm making these tissues out of. And true to form, we can make our tissues out of very low quality things. And we can see the outcomes of that. The human body is very resilient. That's another thing we can talk about. It's incredibly resilient and adaptable. A lot of the things that we consider to be diseases or disease diagnoses or labels are just the body finding a way to operate under unideal circumstances, right? So like type 2 diabetes is a great example of that. It's a situation where there's this very, very abnormal amount of sugar coming into the system, of blood glucose elevation. And blood glucose is not a bad thing. We need blood glucose. But the amount that the human body can get into it today is incredibly abnormal. We've never experienced that kind of exposure in human history. And so with that being said, all that glucose in our body can really start to tear things up. And so the body makes this kind of adaptation as we're kind of shuttling into our fat cells and muscle cells, and they're getting filled up. And it can be dangerous even for that. And so it's just like your body's like, we're going to mute that. We're going to mute that opportunity. We're going to downgrade that signal for insulin. And the crazy part with type 2 diabetes, your pancreas is still making it though, right? And so it's made this one adaptation over here, but something else is going to suffer. And it's really your body's just adjusting, like, this is a higher quality or a higher priority thing. I'm going to address this. And so that's what the condition really is. It's the body adapting to unideal circumstances. And that just really speaks to the body's intelligence. And so to put a bow on this, man, like, how can we use food to heal? It's just, number one, understanding that food is a primary mechanism of healing, of building the body, of improving processes, or it's a primary asset of degradation. So it's just starting with that principle.
Can you paint the picture for us of what public health looks like today? I mean, because today we regularly rattle off statistics like 60% of the calories that your average American consumes comes from ultra-processed food. So do we essentially live amidst a population of ultra-processed people? If you are what you eat.
Wow, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, man, this is so good. So good. Yeah. So, all right. So this is, you just mentioned one of the statistics that's been passed around in our nutritional circles. And this was published in the BMJ, one of our most prestigious journals. About 60% of the average American's diet is now ultra processed foods. And so let's talk about what that means really quickly. And we might have talked about this before, but humans have been processing foods forever. All right. Taking a tomato and processing it, adding some spices and whatnot, we can end up with a pasta sauce, for example, or taking olives and crushing them, stone crush, cold processing, you have olive oil. Those are processed foods, and they're very, very health affirmative for most people, not everybody. However, compare that to what it takes to make canola oil, right? And you've seen it. You've seen how it's made. It's just like all of this high heat processing, very, very sensitive structure of these oils. And that high temperature is creating all of this reactive oxygen species, and they use bleaching agents and they use deodorizing agents. And it's really a disgusting process. And then framing that as a quality human food, right? It's just like, that is ultra processed. And that there are some people who, unfortunately, there's a lot of infighting about silly stuff like this, but well-meaning researchers and scientists who are just like, well, canola oil is good for you, and they have some data to affirm that, or, vegetable oil, same thing. And we have to really just take a step back and just, again, ask ourselves, honestly, is that an ultra processed food or not? Is that a high quality human food? If we're comparing that to something that is minimally processed, as humans have been utilizing for thousands of years, what's probably going to be better for us? And so I think we can use a little bit more just rationality right now would be helpful. Now, with that ultra processed food consumption, what I'm bringing forward in this new book, Eat Smarter Family Cookbook, is the data on U.S. children. All right. And I was shocked. I'm not going to say I didn't believe it, but I couldn't believe nobody was talking about this. And so this was published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association. They tracked the food consumption of United States children from 1999 to 2018. And they found that in 1999, the average U.S. child's diet was over 61% ultra-processed foods already. Wow. In 2018, it was up to near 70% ultra-processed foods. All right. And so, again, what does another ultra-processed food look like? If we start off with corn and then a bunch of chemicals, and we can end up with Lucky Charms or Pop cereal, right? Something that is so far removed from anything recognizable that it came from anywhere in nature. That's really an ultra-processed food. And that's making up the majority of our children's diet. And it's like
their palates are still developed, not just their palates, right, are still in that state of development, but it's their brains. Their brains are still developing. Their bodies are still developing. It's at an incredibly rapid pace.
So this speaks to you just said it, are we having more ultra-processed humans? And this reminds me of Kate Shanahan, mutual friend. I think you've had her on before.
I've never had her on, but I want to. I know. I mean, I love her book, Deep Nutrition.
Yes.
Yeah, she's an OG. Mm-hmm.
And so she shared this study with me where they looked at biopsies of fat cells back in the earlier part, like around the 1900s. And they found that the average human fat cell was made up of about 2% PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids. Whereas today, a biopsy of the average American, their fat cells now made up of about 25 to 30% polyunsaturated fatty acids.
Wow.
So literally the ingredients that are being used to make us are different. We have a different human recipe. So what you said earlier, that statement, are there a lot of ultra-processed people walking around? Yes. We're making different recipes. And here's the thing, it's just, again, it's not that it's all bad, all right? It might be some kind of evolutionary advantage some kind of way. X-Men might start to pop off right now. We don't know, all right? But from the looks of things, we're not doing well. We're experiencing far higher multi-epidemics, really. I can't say epidemics. Multi-epidemics of chronic diseases. I don't know if you saw this, the CDC's numbers from last year. The CDC came up and they got this cute little infographics. It's so annoying, man. But their new data shows that 60% of US citizens now have at least one chronic disease.
Wow.
And 40% have two or more.
Wow.
Right. And so it's just like sickness is now normalized. Chronic disease is now normalized. And it reminds me of this quote from Krishnamurti. It was,
oh my God, I love Krishnamurti.
It was essentially that it is no measure of health to be adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Right? Because that's the thing. Like, we want to be well adjusted. We want to feel integrated. We want to have family and community and connection. If we're adapted to that in a severely sick society, what does that say about us? And this is really where the conversation needs to go, because for years, I've been in this field for over 20 years, man. And I spent a lot of time trying to call out all of the different systems that were leading to these poor health outcomes. Whereas today, I realized that working with patients over the years, we would try to target, any well-meaning practitioner is going to try to target behavior change. Like, just do this, do that, avoid this, that kind of stuff. And we need that, absolutely. But how much more difficult is it to make that behavior change in a culture that is severely sick and dysfunctional? And that's really the solution, is addressing the culture, right? And the macro culture and the micro culture. So here's what I mean by that. The macro culture, and by the way, let's define culture. All right. A culture is defined as the attitudes, behaviors, values, and beliefs of a community that is then passed on to future generations. All right. So it's a shared collective of values, ideas, beliefs, behaviors that we share collectively, and we inherently pass that on to our offspring. All right. So that's what culture is. In the United States right now, we have the most chronically ill culture in the history of humanity, documented human history. We've never seen this level of chronic disease. We're not doing well. And this also, not to mention the mental health epidemics, infectious diseases, that's something we thought we had a handle on.
Right.
It just continues to get worse. And we have to ask why, like, what is happening here? And so for us, and my mission moving forward is, yes, we need to address that kind of global culture. And I want to circle back and talk about this because I come from a community living in Ferguson, Missouri, just, all over St. Louis, and living in a glorified food desert, basically, and we were getting food from charities and this, and kind of, I could talk about that in a moment, but
Wow.
I know about what the culture can influence as far as your choices. But what I want to point to is that we have a very powerful ability to change our microculture, right? So the culture within our household. With controlling the controllables, what is the thing you have the most control over? It's yourself. And so instead of trying to change the environment around you, start with you, but like really put some energy and intention into that. Because in my clinical work, when people were coming in and they were vocalizing like what is stopping them from making that behavior change, I'm telling you, man, it was a daily basis. And I'm like, here it comes. My husband won't. If only my kids would, if my mother won't, my father won't. They were always talking about other people close to them, making it harder for them to be healthy.
Right.
Like, I want to do this, but my kids wouldn't be on board, or my husband makes this kind of food, right? And it's not that it's not valid. It's just that you have so much more power than that. You're just outsourcing it and pointing fingers. And also, we have to understand that change and you getting the health that you want, the body composition changes you want, the changes in your blood work, you're going to have to be a different person. You're going to have to change, and it's going to be uncomfortable because you're used to being you. You might not like you, but you're used to it. And so I would start to keep on pointing it back to that internal power, that's empowerment, right? So that they start to feel stronger in the conditions around them. Now, with that said, I also, as I moved on in the years in my work, I would start to find ways to integrate and get in touch with, get feelers into the household, whether it's with their kids, their significant other, parents, whatever it is. They would know who I am, like whether it's conversations, whether it's, videos. That's one of the reasons I started my show as well, just to be able to like share these things from somebody other than the person close to you, because we have this tendency to not really listen to people that we're close to. So, that's one of the big things, is understanding our power to change internally ourselves, and then starting to make changes in our household, this microenvironment. Now, you know this, man. You see my family. Like, my family's a big part of this project. And we've created a culture in our household that makes health easy. We've created a culture in our household that makes poor choices, or choices that would have poor health outcomes, hard to make.
Wow.
All right. And it's just like, we came into this with some intention, of course, but, you know, one of the big things that I want people to walk away with today, and it's one of the most profound things I found in this research, really has to do with social science and how eating together with people that we care about affects our health outcomes.
Oh, massive.
And so even last night, you know, we sat down and had family dinner together, and that's on the endangered species list. Only about 30% of families in America eat together on a regular basis. That's according to researchers at Harvard. And they had this huge data set tracking family behaviors and health outcomes. I was like, why isn't anybody talking about this? And another one of their studies looked at families that eat together on a regular basis have a far greater intake of essential nutrients that help to prevent chronic disease and reduce intake of ultra-processed foods, chips and soda and things like that. And I was just like, wow, this is crazy. But let me look and see, is there other researchers studying this? And I came across this fascinating study that was done on minority children, which would generally be in a context of a low-income environment like I come from. And what they found was that children who ate 4 meals a week with their family they ended up eating 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. Most days of the week, was about 5 days a week, and significantly less ultra-processed foods, notably chips and soda. And the researchers noted, in particular, when the TV is never or rarely on when having family meals, right? And so, man, when I read this, I just stood there for a moment. I just stood there and stared at my computer, like, because my family didn't know that. And looking at, because that's also one of the excuses that we had that's valid. It's just like, we don't have the resources. We're going to eat either way. If we would have known that simply eating together as a family created some kind of a protective field around the children, I think my family would have been more adamant about doing it. Because it's not that they wanted us to be sick or to not have a healthy culture. It's just like, we didn't know. And so I'll share one more study with you on this.
I love this. I mean, this is like my growing up, it was very important to my mother, the matriarch of my household, that we ate together as a family unit almost every single night growing up. It was amazing. I mean, she obviously didn't have the data regarding health that you have, but for her, it was really important that it solidified the family unit. It solidified the relationship that me and my brothers have with one another, the relationship that we have with our parents. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, correlation doesn't equal causation, as we all know, but we grew up very close, and all of my, me as well as my 2 brothers obviously are very health conscious, and none of us really struggle with any kind of chronic disease or anything like that, knock on wood. So yeah, I mean, I'm in a way, I'm sort of like, I feel like a walking testament to everything that you're sharing.
Exactly. You are, man. Again, the results speak for themselves. Now, in addition to the data, which I'm going to come back and share that study I was going to share, let's again look at logic here. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans, the process of eating has revolved around tribe. We required community in order to procure our food. Hunting, gathering, the preparation of the food, eating together was something humans have done forever. The celebration also around that experience. And so, for example, if we look at like a hunter-gatherer tribe, there are a few still on the planet today, but there's a cultural tenet, unconscious, of course, that if we don't move together, if we're not physically active together, we will die. If we don't move, we don't eat. We have to move in order to procure our food, right? In our culture, here in the United States and many other places, movement is optional. It's optional today in order for us to eat, right? And so also the culture in a hunter-gatherer tribe, for example, would block their awareness that Lucky Charms are even an option, right? It blocks their awareness that, pulling up to McDonald's is just something that people do. It's not to say that there isn't, I think there was a movie called The Gods Must Be Crazy or something like that. There's like a Coca-Cola bottle scene. It's one of my wife's favorite movies. from when she was a kid. But anyways, it's not that they wouldn't come across some of this information, but it's just not a part of their culture. Like they really don't get that I can just go to 7-Eleven and throw my spear through a hot dog, right? Like it's that easy here. And so with that being said, my question was there something protective about people eating together for all those thousands of years that we're missing out on today by not eating together? And when I looked at the data, again, I shared a little bit of it. But so this process has been devolving to where today, as I mentioned, only about 30% of families are eating together regularly, whereas this was just what you did. And so such a dramatic shift so quickly. My question was, again, has this caused a problem for our health? Are we now missing a protective agent? And part of it, let me just even share another logical point. Like, why would it be protective for these kids? Like this study, and this was published in the journal Pediatrics, another study in JAMA. And the researchers found that in particular for children, and this is my call for everybody, my call to action for everybody today. They found that eating together with their family, children eating together with their family just 3 days a week, and it could be any meal, 3 days a week led to significantly lower rates of obesity, lower rates of disordered eating, and several other chronic diseases. All right. Again, just studying family behavior. And they found that, this was like this kind of bare minimum, that 3 meals a week. Suddenly, the children were less obese. Suddenly, they had less disordered eating. And they were just like, what is going on? Again, this is published data, but nobody's talking about this. And so all these studies, by the way, are in the book.
I love it. Why do you think nobody's talking about it?
I just think we haven't asked the question. There have been people like your mom, for example, who've just known. They knew in their heart, like, this is my family. This is what we do. This is what we do to connect, to care for each other. And this table is a unifier, right? She knew that. She didn't have to have the data, right? And so now we have researchers who are questioning these things, right? And this is something you do as well. Like, we're constantly asking questions about stuff. And the great thing is that there are more people than ever who are questioning things, and they're designing studies around them. They're sharing the data, but it's pointing us back to logic, which is we need each other. And another study that I shared in the book, this was a meta-analysis of 148 studies. And this was researchers at Brigham Young University. And again, 148 studies, over 300,000 test subjects. And they found that our social ties, having strong, healthy social connections, led to a 50% reduction in all-cause mortality.
Wow.
All right. It was more impactful on their health than exercise, than beating obesity. This was the number one thing in the data. It was the most powerful epigenetic influence on our health is our relationships. And now, again, it is the number one thing. How much energy and intention are we putting into it? Because here's the thing. Having healthy relationships and having relationships with people who are about that health life. As soon as I walk in the door, you're telling me about some new health stuff.
Yeah.
It's just like, it makes it so much more accessible. And I'm here to say that, number one, we can connect with more people like that than ever today. We can use technology in an efficacious way, or we can be distracted. And we also have the opportunity, if we don't have that person, we can be that person for other people. That was really how I got into this. And before I knew it, now I'm surrounded. I'm completely engulfed. My universe is health, my entire universe. And it was just me alone in Ferguson, Missouri, 30 pounds overweight, diagnosed with the so-called incurable spinal condition. I broke my hip just running one day at track practice.
Jeez.
And I'm sleeping. I have a mattress on the floor. I have this, my wife just mentioned this the other day, which I forgot, honestly, because I hadn't thought about it so long. I met her in college, and this was after I really transformed my health.
I love the relationship that you have with your wife.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
She's my bestie, man. But when she came over, I met her at the gym. I was training at the time at the university that we both were going to, which was so cool. Again, like, I went from being so unhealthy to now I'm working in fitness and get my certification. I'm studying, biology now in college and all this stuff. And, but anyways, I was, training some clients, and she would come in from time to time, like with her friend. And I was just like so focused on my thing, which fortunately we didn't meet earlier, because I was just like, oh, this girl's dedicated. Like that was all I thought about it. But she dropped her headphones one day at the gym. She was on the adductor machine with the legs open, that most awkward machine. She dropped her headphones. So I picked them up and gave it to her. And, I noticed she had a little bit of an accent. She's from Kenya. And that like impressed her. But I work with people from all over the world. So I just kind of picked that up a little bit. And, but the rest is history. But anyway, so she came over one day and I was just like, I cook, whatever. And I'm embarrassed to say this. We are all phenomenal cooks. All right. We're about that life. Even my youngest son he's 11. Like he's been cooking for years. We're incredible cooks. We love food. We're a big food family.
Wow.
But at the time, because of my health dogma, instead of making, some pasta, whatever, I was like, I'll make spaghetti. It was this really terrible whole wheat pasta, which, it's just not the same. And not even ground turkey, but ground turkey breast, which is the drier, So I'm already starting behind, enemy lines here.
That's
trying
hilarious.
To make a good dish. But anyway, so she ate it. I didn't know till years later that it wasn't good, But since then, of course, like wow, my goodness, so many incredible recipes. But she shared with me the other day, and we were hanging out with some friends, and she was talking about my love seat that I had there. Which, like, a love seat is just a tiny couch. And I struggled to it wasn't a love, it was a hate seat. All right, to be honest,
In your old, university apartment?
Yes. This carpet that we have right here, the couch was made out of that. All right, just layers of that. And because when I was overweight, my big ass broke through one half of the couch. And so it was a bunch of pillows that were like under that cushion. It was so terrible. And when she came over, when she saw it, she was just like, how does he get girls over here? And then she realized she was over there.
It's a good way to weed out the wrong women, though.
I mean, it was no wrong. If you're, come on now. But, her having that insight that I'm here, like I'm thinking he can't get girls, but I'm literally standing here, And so, but anyways, coming from those conditions and being able to stand up and to take responsibility for my health, despite the environment around me. And here's the thing, when you make a decision to take control of your health, to just find solutions, to be more focused on solutions, because at the time I was fully tuned into problems prior to that, all the blame in the world. And there's this brain phenomenon, really, it's called instinctive elaboration. I don't know if we talked about this before.
No.
So it's like a mental reflex that the brain does, because we're always questioning things constantly. You might be kind of like underneath our like top consciousness, but we're always asking questions, and it's driving our behavior, right? This is why, like, even with television shows, like, they know humans don't like having questions unanswered. This open loop phenomenon. And so instinctive elaboration is a question that our dominant question we pose ourselves, and we'll consciously and unconsciously be searching for the answers all the time.
Wow.
And so for me, my dominant question for those 2 years of suffering that I was experiencing was, why me? Why me? Why me? I would just ask, that was like an automatic all the time in my head. Why won't they help me? Why won't this physician help me? Why won't my family help me? Why this? Why won't my teachers care? Like all of this, why me? And you're going to be scanning your environment internally and externally to find information to affirm why you, right? You suck, you're not very helpful, you're self-centered, whatever. Like you're gonna start to really cultivate answers to that. Now, it switched like instantaneously, man. And again, like of course, like with those, they say that neurons that fire together, wire together. You're just laying down that more and more and more. It's not that it instantly dissolves, but for me, I think that you could change your psychology with repetition and also with a really emotionally charged event. Like some of the most memorable experiences we have are like either what we would frame as negative or positive events in our lives, like something very emotional, really like it's very visceral for us, right? And so because it was so visceral, it changed everything. And I asked, what can I do to feel better? What can I do to feel better? And I hadn't even thought about that for those 2 years. And that led me to starting to see life differently. And man, the solutions were there the whole time, by the way. I had a friend who was in chiropractic college And I just thought she was so weird, we hang out every now and then, whatever. But I just like, I want nothing to do with that life, I was just trying to kick it. And, but now, like within a week of me asking that question, we just go for it. I'm riding with her somewhere. She stops at Wild Oats, which has since been bought up by Whole Foods. And I didn't even know it existed. I've drove past there hundreds of times, just on the highway.
What is it, like a health food store?
Wild Oats, yeah. So Wild Oats is just, Whole Foods bought them up, but they were like more of a kind of like mom and pop type vibe.
Got it.
And by the way, where I come from in St. Louis, there was one Whole Foods, by the way, one. Here in LA, come on, man.
One on every block.
One on every block. You could yell. We could yell out the window and somebody could hear us at a Whole Foods,
right.
But
I'm not mad at it, but
I know it's really cool, man. But in St. Louis there was one, and it was damn sure not by me in Ferguson, Missouri.
Wow.
But now that I know that this exists, and they had some books there, and I was being in college and doing research and this kind of stuff, I just went straight over and I started to like look at, because it had like all these nutrition prescriptions for different conditions, and I went and looked up mine, this degenerative disc disease, and I was just like, I'm looking at the references and I'm like, what? Omega-3s? Like, all I knew about for my bone density, because my bone density was so low, was like calcium. I'm drinking all this milk every day, but now it's like all these other things.
Can omega-3s help? Because everybody has some degree of degenerative disc disease, right?
Yes. Listen, so, oh man, if we even want to talk about this, so our disc, I'm like masterful with this now.
Well, because you've struggled with this for years.
Yeah. So, at the time when I was 20 years old, my physician said that I had the spine of an 80-year-old person.
Whoa.
And my discs were so degenerated. They were like black. Like the light didn't really shine through them on the MRIs. And there was two herniated discs, L4, L5, S1. And, it led to this sciatic nerve pain that was just like, it was so painful, man. It just would keep me up at night. Like if I changed position, it just like, it kept waking me up out of my sleep. It was torturous. So, some of the things that, and I never stopped to ask, like, what are my discs made of, right? What are the raw materials that are used? Same thing with my blood, same thing with my brain, right? And so I found that, and this was from just, again, asking these questions, what are my discs made of? That the discs are non-vascular, right? So what that means is, it's not that they don't get nourishment, but they don't have like a direct nutrient supply or blood flow, right? And so they get hydrated and nutrition in many ways through a process called remote diffusion, which, again, this is getting into some freaky like Star Trek type stuff, but being able to like shuttle these nutrients across these channels that normally like other things just can't get into. So the point being is this: number one, the most important part with our disc, and anybody can track this themselves, if you measure yourself when you wake up in the morning and when you go to bed at night, you're probably going to be shorter at night.
Whoa.
Just because of, that gravitational weight, right? And that hydration of your disc is also getting reduced, all right? And so being that they're non-vascular and getting hydration even, because it's like a lower tier thing, unfortunately, your spine, and by the way, so this goes back to the study that I saw in that book. So the paper that I was reading, it said that when you're deficient in these particular nutrients, whatever they were at the time, and I already mentioned a couple, it was like silica, omega-3s, yada, yada, and deficient in these key minerals, your body will take them from your hip and your spine first, right? It's kind of like a reservoir there. And so I was just like, oh, that's when everything changed. That's when I had like that Matrix moment because it's just like, I broke my hip and my spine is degenerated. This is where my body's like leaching calcium, for example, to clot my blood, right? That was more important. My body making blood was deemed to be more important. So it's just doing what it has to do.
Yeah.
Right. And so like there's an intelligence there, but I was making it harder for myself.
Wow. That's
what clicked in. And so just like, what if I give myself, and then I found there wasn't just one form of calcium. There are all these other forms. I had a nutritional science class. I paid a lot of money at a private university to get miseducated, really, about nutrition. The teacher would tell us, make sure that, you tell patients, and including yourself, get plenty of essential vitamins and minerals. Basically, he was just saying, take a multivitamin.
Yeah.
there's multiple forms of vitamin C. There's multiple forms of, obviously, B12 even, for example.
Yeah.
There's multiple forms of B12. It isn't just one thing. And the question is the thing in that supplement, that synthetic version of vitamin C, is that what my body even needs to do that process I'm trying to do? Here's a not so fun fact. All right. These vitamin C supplements, synthetic vitamin C supplements on the market, over 90% of them are made from genetically modified cornstarch or corn syrup.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Does that change their bioavailability, or like how does it affect? Because it's typically vitamin C, as far as I know, it's ascorbic acid. It's like the same stuff. I mean, I've never been concerned about like where it comes from, but if you're saying that this is something that I need to be paying attention to,
I came across, this was a wonderful study looking at a whole food concentrate version of vitamin C versus a synthetic form of vitamin C. And this was published in the Journal of Cardiology. All right. And it put up one of the most vitamin C dense foods ever discovered. It might be the most, which is called camu berry, CAMU.
Heard of it.
And so they utilized a concentrate of camu berry, vitamin C, versus, again, a synthetic form of that. And they administered it to people that were proactively doing something to create a lot of oxidation. And these were people who were smokers, right? So they were habitual smokers. And so this was a 1-week study period. And they found that the camu whole food version of vitamin C significantly lowered oxidative stress and inflammatory biomarkers like C-reactive protein in these participants.
Wow.
While the synthetic version of vitamin C did nothing.
Interesting.
All right. And now to take that just one step further, another one of the studies that I shared looked at, and this was crazy, folks who were taking synthetic vitamin C supplements over significant amounts of time, which again, if you're just taking a multivitamin with it in there, were twice as likely to develop kidney stones. All right. So again, everything has a cost. And we've got to understand the difference between real food nutrition and the synthetic versions of things that, again, we've got wonderful scientists today, wonderful innovations that we've made. Something like a gas chromatograph has been able to isolate certain flavors, like the chemical formula that makes up the flavor of cherry, for example, or root beer, right? We can isolate that. Now we can put that root beer flavor into something else, right? Put strawberry flavor into something else. And now we start to muddy up those waters, though, of like that communication, like what did we evolve having these certain tastes associated with certain nutrients? Now that's gone. But even with that being said, when we start to isolate things, right, and take them away also from their, it's not just the fact that this vitamin C is in camu berry. There are all these other cofactors and biopotentiators that do things we don't even understand. We barely know what's in food right now.
It's the whole food matrix, I think, is probably another potential mechanism where we saw probably causally related to that difference in outcomes, right? Mm-hmm. Like you extract this singular nutrient from the whole food matrix. We didn't evolve with nutrients in isolation. We evolved with food. Yeah. And so our bodies, it may as well, and I don't know this to be true, but I'm saying, I'm sort of hypothesizing out loud that it could be no different than a foreign object, like some kind of xenobiotic compound to our body when extracted from the whole food matrix.
I definitely agree with that. It just seems very obvious. And with that being said, this could be used therapeutically. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily want to get into a habit, again, where we're taking a synthetic form of whatever it is on a consistent basis, because it's probably going to carry a high toxicity load, right? And what's going to take the brunt of all this is one organ, for example, is going to be our liver, right? Our liver is responsible for drug metabolism, for alcohol metabolism, obviously, and also dealing with supplements. And there's been quite an increase, and I talked about this in my last book, in liver dysfunction due to excessive intake of drugs and even supplements as well.
Wow.
And I'm a fan of certain supplements, and if we can get them in more of a whole food version or form or concentrate, that's even better for me. And by the way, again, being in this field for over 20 years, I've tried everything. I've tried so many different types of supplements, but I've always come back to and found the most benefit from those that are coming from like whole food sources.
Yeah.
Right. So even with the vitamin C, if there's a vitamin C supplement that I'm taking, it would be camelberry concentrate along with maybe some amla berry, like high vitamin C foods, concentrates that have all the other cofactors as well.
So if I were to walk, I've never been to your house, but if I were to walk into the Stevenson household and look into your pantry, go into your fridge, what would you say are some of the highest impact foods that you're stocking your house with?
Ooh, let me tell you, and especially, so this is your show too, man. It's just, we got to talk about brain health.
I'm down.
All right. So one of the foods that it's always in my freezer that I love, and it's also getting, it can get twisted and turned into something a little bit unsavory though, but it's acai.
Acai.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of acai.
I love it. Have you ever been to Brazil? You got to go.
No.
It's a Brazilian berry, I think.
That's right. Yeah, it is. We got to go get it from the source.
Bomb. Yeah, let's do it.
This is why also you're only going to find it frozen here. And a lot of the berry is actually a seed. And like the acai, quote, berry part itself that we have is a very small part of the berry. It takes quite a bit of processing. And so again, this is a minimally processed food. But this was published in Nutritional Neuroscience, and they found that acai is able to, and this was a meta-analysis looking at even metabolic health and the influence. But they found that over time, acai was found to help to prevent or reduce memory loss.
Wow.
Right? So that was number one, and also specifically reduce inflammation and neuroinflammation at that. All right. So it really has this affinity towards brain health, brain function, brain support. So that's one of the things that you're probably always going to find in my freezer, some of those frozen acai packets.
Are you able to find sugar-free versions of it?
Yeah, that's what we always get.
Wow.
And that's another thing, with the Eat Smarter Family Cookbook, I have my favorite acai, which again, we've had friends over. This is one of those things I'll like whip up, for example. I've seen people literally using their finger to clean the bottom of the bowl.
Wow.
Like it's just like, it's that good. But I always get it because we want to be able to manage the sweetener that we're using, right? And so what I've done is also it's a protein bowl as well, acai protein bowl. So we have some protein concentrates in there as well. Again, whole food versions of those. And here's the key is because acai isn't necessarily sweet berry at all, but I'm using honey. And I'm being very bullish on honey these days, man.
Honey's good.
Because I'm just thinking about, again, what have we been using the longest as a species? Humans have been dabbling with honey for a long, long time. And one of the studies that I actually shared in the book as well, and I'll share that with you guys here, this was published in the journal Nutrients, and it detailed how raw honey, keyword raw honey intake was found to improve fasting blood glucose levels in study participants. This was a human study. It was a meta-analysis of multiple studies.
Wow.
Designed looking at metabolic health and honey. All right. And in addition to that, they found that not only did it help to improve fasting blood glucose, it was able to reduce the overall risk of heart disease by, notably for these researchers, it improved lipid metabolism as well. They also noted vast improvements in antioxidants in the body and anti-inflammatory benefits of honey. That's just for starters. All right. So we have a sweetener that can potentially improve insulin sensitivity, potentially improve your fasting blood glucose. Like that's really special. That's special. So to even put honey in the category of a sweetener is like, it's a little disrespectful to the bees. All right. So, it's something really special. And in addition, I shared a bunch of other studies on this. By the way, so we go through and I point out this process of like eating with a purpose. So if your goal is to improve your metabolic health, to reduce your, body fat, improve body composition, what if there are foods that you could start to stack conditions and eating more of those foods that can help with that? The same thing with improving memory and cognitive function and attention. And so what I did in the book was and I know we have an emoji culture as well. And so any foods and I've shared over 40 specific foods, some of my favorite foods that have benefits for cognitive function. You're going to see a little brain emoji next to it. If it improves your sleep quality, there's like a little sleep emoji. And metabolic health, there's a muscle emoji. And so people are going to see that The studies will be right there, and then I'm going to show you how to cook with it.
Wow.
In the book as well. So man, it's so good, so special. And so that's the sweetener that we use in the acai bowl. So that's one of the things you're always going to see in my refrigerator. You're going to see acai bowls. I'm sorry, acai packets. You're going to see honey all the time in my cabinets. It's just, again, I'm very bullish on honey right now, especially with all of the controversy around different sweeteners. It's not to say that we can't use other stuff, but I want to use it. That's more of a real whole food based sweetener versus, some of the kind of concentrated artificial and or even natural sweeteners that, they might end up, even with stevia. I don't want to get into a debate here, but stevia is, I'm cool with stevia. You could put a couple of drops of stevia in a few things. But when you got a bag of stevia that looks like a bag of sugar, like your red flag should go up. Like, man, I wonder, because if you've ever seen, I have stevia leaves, by the way, at the house. It looks like a bag of.
Do you?
It looks like it's Pineapple Express.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it tastes, it's sweet. It's a sweet little leaf. They're dried. It's a sweet little leaf, but it kind of has like a medicine-y, like, background to it.
Yeah,
like
a lot of people don't like the stevia aftertaste. But you still got people out here in 2023 afraid of carbs. And you're telling them to eat more honey. Have you ever been part of one of these so-called diet tribes? I mean, I feel like you in many ways are like Diet Switzerland. Like, you don't get into the battles online. You don't talk necessarily about the value of eating animal source foods or plant. You're sort of like in the middle in a way, which I try to be as well, but I don't see you getting into like the battles that I find myself in unwittingly.
I love this, man. Dietary Switzerland. Yeah. I think that
I'm taking notes. How do you do it, man?
I think that we automatically are going to go through a phase of being dogmatic, especially when you've done something to improve your health, or you've seen it happen for somebody that you love, or you grew up with it and it appears to be working. You're going to be very bullish on that form of that dietary framework.
Yeah.
So whether it's a carnivore diet, whether it's a vegan diet, whether it's a raw food diet. And so I definitely have my phase. Again, I've been in this now. It's almost my 21st year coming up here next month. And that being the case, so 15, 20 years ago, when I first started to figure out a few things, I definitely became dogmatic. It's just I've outgrown it.
It's like Dunning-Kruger. We all go through it.
Yeah. I
had this brilliant dude, Ted Naiman, on my show recently. He was a medical doctor, and he brought up a really interesting point. He's a great guy to get on the show. Love his work. But he was saying that when you don't really fully understand something, you have no choice but to believe in it almost like religiously. And when you don't understand a topic, but you've seen great benefit from it, you want to evangelize it literally like a religious zealot, like a missionary of sorts.
Exactly. And that's what we're seeing. And especially now we have, social media and the ability to be a missionary in a whole new way, and to build your identity around that as well, and to build a platform around that. It can be very difficult for you to question your own religiosity or your own dogma or your own principles. But part of the reason we go to that is that we're always looking for things that can help us to, this even goes back to culture as well, which is we like the idea of freedom, but we don't really handle it very well. And so what I mean by that is having some rules in place and structure enables us to actually create more freedom for ourselves. When we just have infinite options and possibilities, like there's a great book from Barry Schwartz many, many years ago, The Paradox of Choice. Like when we have so many options, it debilitates us. And so knowing like, this is what I do, this is my framework, these are things I don't do, it just helps to create some certainty. It helps to create a sense of peace within our psyche. And so that's the benefit of having any of these diet frameworks. That's one of the benefits. But also, and here's the thing, again, these are my friends, the champions of carnivore diet, champions of vegan diets, and everything in between. I know like the person in all of them. And I'll tell you what, part of the problem too, why we might see people hating on each other like that, is they don't see the love and the humanity that person who's the champion of that thing has, because they're doing it oftentimes from the space of they've seen it help people. They've seen it help the patients that they're working with. And sometimes, again, not sometimes, many times, these are people who've struggled. They tried everything, what they believe to be everything. They've tried so many things and they weren't able to get off their, metformin and insulin, and they weren't able to, address their hypertension and drop the lisinopril and the statins, and they're just slowly decaying, right? Because that's another misnomer that we have, is that we're living longer today. We're dying longer. We just extended the suffering, right? And so these folks oftentimes are coming from a really heart-based place where they've helped people who were deemed to be unhelpable, like me. That's what happened with me. So that's why if I had that experience where I'm told by 4 physicians that I'll never be able to walk normally again, that I'm going to be in pain for the rest of my life, and then I don't have that issue anymore, it's quote remission, like there's a whole different level of authority that I'm going to be speaking from.
Yeah.
Now, the microphone that I'm using or the channel that I'm speaking through with that authority can be influential in a positive or not so positive way if I become dogmatic. And I definitely did, because I was converting a lot of people to what I believe to be the best diet 15 years ago.
Were you ever like shirtless, screaming at food, recording selfies at the local market?
I don't recall. I mean, I might have been nutrient deprived, so you might have some footage out there, but no, man. I mean, but even still, so again, they're coming from that place. But like I said, when you build your identity around that, it's going to be hard for you to question and but here's also what I know from being inside of this for all this time, is that a lot of these folks do not prescribe 100% to their diet framework. They don't. And that's okay. All right. But when other people see them, they think that they try to be like them. And sometimes a diet framework might leave out a food that is exactly what your cells need to turn on whatever gene expression that you need right now to feel the way that you want to feel. And it could be just off limits for you. And the same thing holds true. You could be eating something that is like tip of the spear food in your diet framework that's fucking you up every day. And you're just continuing to eat that food because it's just like this guy, this girl, they told me that this is what I'm supposed to eat.
Yeah.
So I'm just like gobbling down, coconut oil. And not that coconut oil is bad, by the way, okay? But they're just doing that thing because it's the diet framework.
Yeah.
And here's the last part of this, is that a lot of times when something works for us, we become very bullish on it as well, especially if it works for a time period. What I saw many times was somebody would get these results for a few months, maybe even a few years, but then stuff would start to happen. It would not work like it used to. And then they'd tell themselves, I'm just not doing it right. I need to do it harder. I'm not being as, whatever. I need to get back. And I want you to start to catch yourself when you say get back, because we can't time travel. This is not Michael J. Fox vibes, okay? Let's move forward with greater intelligence, all right? Because you picked up an experience, you picked up some insights, some assessments. You need to bring those to now, because chances are you can take that knowledge and build on it. But going back to something that might not have served you the way that you think, and also bringing something from the past to your updated life might not work the way that you want it to work. And this is why we tend to get into this. We create learned helplessness, beating ourselves up because we're just not doing the diet framework right. And so last part with this, and why I would appear to be Dietary Switzerland is every one of these frameworks has value. And I'm very much aware of that. It's just really about what works for the person right now. And that's where I know the future of, it's already here really, is personalized nutrition. But I've been doing this for over a decade. So before I shifted over to just being primarily a researcher, writing books, and I was working with people on a day-to-day basis, I'm so grateful that I had the revelation, which is I need to do what's best for this person in front of me. And it might not be anything that I would prescribe to anybody else. I've got to find out what their heritage is. What were their parents and their grandparents eating? I need to find out, what is their work life like? What's going on with their stress? What's going on in their relationship, right? What running their blood work and seeing what are the individual biomarkers that are screwed up with this person that we could do something with nutritionally. It needs to be based on you and not this kind of glorified idea of what a perfect diet is supposed to be. There is no perfect diet. There isn't a perfect diet for any one person. There's a perfect diet for you as you are right now, and that shit's going to change probably next week. And so let's equip people with the skills so that they can continue to adapt and evolve as life evolves.
Amen. I'm eating a diet that's, I think, dramatically different than the diet that I was eating 5 years ago and even 10 years ago. I mean, I'm constantly evolving, and I aspire to bring my audience along with me for the journey. But yeah, I mean, I'm eating now. I mean, I'm eating grains on a consistent basis. I'm eating like oatmeal in the morning because for one, I enjoy it, but also because I'm now working out in the morning, and I've like really focused on dialing up the intensity of my workout. So I'm eating some pre-workout carbohydrates, and I've never seen the strength benefits and the hypertrophy benefits that I'm now seeing thanks to that additional fuel in the tank that I have because of those oats that are apparently, if you look on social media, that are so bad for you, right? I've reduced somewhat my intake of even extra virgin olive oil, which that's the primary oil that I use in my kitchen. But whereas before I used to liberally drench my food in it, now I'm being a little bit more measured, and I've seen that I've lost some body fat pretty effortlessly as a result of that, as a result of limiting the amount of refined fats in my diet. I'm eating more dairy than I've ever consumed before. And I'm not saying, by the way, that anybody needs to be following what I'm doing, because I fully agree with you. But I'm just saying I'm sharing how I've evolved. And I'm very comfortable with this evolution and sharing it, because I like to think that I've never planted my flag in any one camp. I mean, I've borrowed from different sides, but I've shared the value of dietary fiber in the past and how important it is to eat lots of vegetables. And then I've also talked about the value of animal consumption. And I think low carb is great, but also if you're exercising on a regular basis, particularly with vigorous intensity, carbohydrates are an incredibly useful performance enhancing tool that should be tapped. And so, yeah, my diet is constantly evolving, and I honestly feel like I've never been in better shape. Yeah. And my biomarkers are all great. So yeah, you have to be willing to iterate. You really do.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
You just shared the absolute roadmap, which is it's individual for you. That's the thing, is being able to traverse your own life experience. Thank you for sharing that, man, because even me hearing that is just that's another affirmation. You've developed the ability to listen to your body as well. And this is what we really want to get people back to. And part of that might be, again, people not fitting into what you believe they should be fitting into. And I want people to be able to listen to that inner guidance, but it's hard when you're not well. That's the thing, because that intuitive hit for you to go to Krispy Kremes is that might not be your inner guidance system. That might be food chemistry, and an addiction. You know what I'm saying? But also, and this is another thing too, even with the Eat Smarter Family Cookbook, it's very inclusive as well. Because if we need to look at what we all agree on more, obviously. That would be more helpful to have healthy conversations. But regardless of the framework, most of these frameworks are still focused on eating more real whole foods.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but then people getting into the infighting about minutia instead of the majority of what a child is eating in the United States is ultra-processed foods.
Yeah.
Let's get together on this. Let's address this cultural influence that's really the thing that's mainly hurting us, but not even to villainize Hostess cupcakes, right? Not to villainize, Tony the Tiger and Frosted Flakes. We're not in the business of that. That's a thing, and you can even have that thing. But let's make sure that the majority of your nutrition is coming from things that your genes expect you to eat. Let's eat things that humans have evolved eating or close proximity, because this non-human shit that we're eating is what's really hurting us. And so, but here's the thing, even with that, because, and I shared some of this as well, it's true story, I didn't eat a salad until I was 25. That's the first time I ate a salad. I ate fast food at least 300 days a year for many years. All right. Now to see, I know this person sitting in front of you, you're just like, nah, that was my life. And to reiterate, that's not abnormal. There are many people in the US and other places as well who have a similar lifestyle because ultra processed food was cheap. It was very close proximities, all that I knew. And there are certain situations, even with zoning, you can't have certain businesses in certain places. Living in Ferguson, Missouri, you could just name any fast food. It was all right there within mile and a half, 2 mile proximity of my apartment.
Wow.
You can name it, from Dairy Queen to Burger King to McDonald's, obviously, to Jack in the Box, Krispy Kreme, every pizza place you can name, just all of them. They're just all right there. And I can get 2 for 99-cent tacos at Jack in the Box. Or I can buy an avocado for $3. I mean, what do you think I'm gonna do?
You can save the cash.
And also an avocado, that's not normal to me because of the culture that I grew up in. Eating those types of foods was abnormal, right? And so we've got to, of course, the conditions are a problem, the larger culture scape, and we can change that. But this is where we are now, man, which is by you changing your own microculture, yourself, your family, and your household. Now you become so much more influential when you go out your door, because truly, when people see my family, when people see us, they know what's possible. They can see there's something different about us. We just got back from a family vacation in Maui, which, again, I didn't get on a flight until I was 25 either. That was the first time I got on a plane. So even to be able to say this, it's not lost on me. That's a miracle for me. And man, I cannot tell you how many times people are coming up to us, my family, just asking us questions, just like, it's like, I'd never caught it until now. Like now that this project and like my family's a part of it, it's just like, I'm finally paying attention to it. Cause this happens all the time. You know, people would just literally, we're sitting even on the plane, people would just walk by. Maybe they saw us like out at the, before you board, and they just walk by. I was like, your family is so beautiful. And I'm just like, I just look at everybody. I'm just like, yeah, oh my goodness, but truly, man. And then people start to ask us where we're from. They ask us what we do. They ask us, what do we do for fitness? Because, we all have this outward appearance of that. And so that's contagious. That's what I'm trying to say is it's not just the fact of, and I just shared this piece as well in the part of the Framingham study, this idea the researchers came upon, which was that obesity was contagious within the community. And essentially that if you had a close friend or family member that ventures into obesity, that would influence the weight of the group, right? And so this is true. We know this to be true, that behaviors are infectious. There's this whole thing with the 5 closest people in your life, but truly, if you average out the income, it's probably going to be in that proximity, relationship status, health, all those things. Like, we're deeply influenced by the people around us, absolutely. And so what I'm saying is that we can absolutely be a model. We can be a beacon. We can be an example just walking around. The greatest thing that you do for everybody, Max, is you being the person you are, period. You influence people just by you showing up being this guy. But we don't give that much credit to that because we don't have a peer-reviewed study to back that up. And I know a lot about this. I know a lot about data and research. I know the most powerful thing to be true is that our example speaks volumes more than anything else. And so, yeah.
No, I love that because I get asked all the time from my followers how they can inspire or lead their loved ones to healthier behaviors, healthier habits. And my answer, just from personal experience dealing with my mom and in my own, within the constructs of my own constraints of my own family, that people live the way that they want to live. You're fighting a losing battle if you're trying to change somebody. The best thing that you can do, and I found like on the job, is to lead by example, is to just, you got to put your own, as cliche as it sounds, you got to put your own oxygen mask on first.
Yeah, it's harder than ever to do that today though, Max, because, there's so much distraction really. Before you know it, you find yourself down the line. And so, a part of this is also speaking to that too, because I've experienced it as well. Family members, there's this saying that you can't be a prophet in your own land, right? It's one of the, but in reality, it's just because, it's that proximity. The proximity does create like a comfort to where it's just like, that's just Max. He's, I changed his diapers. What does he know kind of thing, but it's a subconscious occurrence. But what needed to be done was, and so I'll just share one of the things that I found to be helpful, which is to give resources that is not from me, right? So my oldest son works in fitness now. I never told him to work in fitness, and he's an incredible trainer. Like, I get all these messages from people. Sometimes, like, I had a mom message me recently who her son bought one of my son's fitness programs, and she was crying because of how much it's helped her son.
Wow.
And I'm just like, wow, like I didn't tell him to do any of that. It's because he's in the culture, right? And so, but what I did, rather than me just modeling and showing him, telling him what to do because he's my kid, I understand, and I had to really work on this, that he's not just mine as well. Like, he's his own soul, his own entity, his own experience. And knowing one of the best things that I could do is, yes, model the behavior, but also expose him to other individuals who are living a life that he would want to live. Right? And so that's been the superpower that I've gained, which is my relationships and the influential people that my kids have in their lives. That's not me telling them. It's very, very powerful. And so even having resources like a cookbook like this to be able to give to somebody, you don't have to say anything. Just give them the book. I'm telling you, it's a game changer as soon as they open the book, because having something that's attractive. Also, what's different about this project too is that everybody eats, and food is one of the joys of our lives. And people versus my previous books are idea books, big idea books, and they've been amazing. I'm grateful for that. But this is bringing in a whole different demographic as well with a cookbook, because not only this is a unique cookbook. It has over 250 scientific references in a cookbook, which is crazy.
Love that.
But it's all tied into a way that's entertaining, beautiful, and obviously, again, you get to eat the things that we're talking about and have wonderful food experiences. And so being able to give sources like that, people know that with podcasts, right? People forwarding this episode, or they hear something and they share it with somebody that they care about. Sometimes that can get through in a way that you can't.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's what we're doing this for. That's why I said yes to this mission that was not necessarily in my comfort zone many years ago, when I was seeing people every day, and I was repeating the same thing. Somebody's coming in with, type 2 diabetes, and, and I'm walking them through how the condition is created, how to reverse engineer it, seeing that light turn on in their eyes. Like, I had no idea that was happening in my body. And at some point I was just like, I need to make sure that this is accessible for more people. That's why I started the show. And it was not easy at all. You know this, man.
Yeah,
people don't know. Like, you gotta show up. It doesn't matter what's going on in your life. You gotta show up and get this done. And so, that's where that came from. And then of course it turned into the books. And ultimately, man, I know some people might think this. I know that a lot of friends and colleagues, they feel like something that they create, like, this is the thing I was born to do. No, this right now, this is my greatest gift, which I don't know anything else that it would be, but my greatest gift in my life is my family. My family is my gift. It's my superpower. And families right now in our society are fractured, deeply fractured. And it's creating so much frustration, divisiveness, poor health, poor mental health. We got to take care of our babies. We got to take care of these kids, man, because this is going into the next generation, and we've got to take control right now. And so I feel like this is what I was born for. I've done all this work in the past, on all these different facets of health, and I'm grateful for that. That just really was equipping me. It was qualifying me for this moment, which is about healing families, healing our community. And I'm very, very grateful for this. There's a statement that life doesn't call the qualified, life qualifies the called.
Ooh.
Right. And so it's just like, it's been qualifying me for this moment. And, and I think one other really cool superpower is, being somebody that loves food so much and is not weird about it, which is like, I even had to check on that because I've got some friends who are like the guy on eat to live, don't live to eat.
Yeah.
Eat to live. Food is just fuel. Good luck with that. All right. And that's cool if that 1% of people can actually buy into that.
That was very Chris Rock, by the way.
So what it really is like, why do we have these flavor receptors that we have? Okay. So I just start to like go back, like why, I start to really deconstruct this.
Yeah.
Humans, we evolved seeking out tasty things. Food tastes good to make us eat it. Different species are attracted to different foods because of the way that they taste. Why would we ignore something so deeply human because of some idea? Again, another dogmatic diet framework. And so I'm all in on food celebration and enjoying the process of getting well. Like deprivation doesn't sound like it equals health.
No.
But joy, fulfillment, family, that sound like those things, even you saying those things, they feel good.
Well, that's why there's so many people in our space that lead with fear. Like they fear monger different, whether it's animal source products or even plant vegetables and things like that. Seemingly innocuous, healthful foods, whole foods, unprocessed foods. You'll find somebody on social media now fear mongering it. There was that great viral video where some guy is like about to eat something for breakfast, and there's like a clip. They put a clip in the corner of like one of these like social media quacks, basically, no, you can't eat that. It's the worst thing ever. And then he goes to eat something else, and there's another video of like, you can't eat that. It's giving you cancer. You can't eat that. And I feel like that's the world that we live in, and it's created all this distrust and fear and unhealthy relationships with food, and it's a huge problem. That's why I so value something like this, where you can literally give it to. You can buy it for yourself. You can gift it to a loved one. You cook something together, and then then lead with appreciation. Be like, Grandma, I really loved cooking with you last night. That was so fun. Mom, we haven't done that in forever. What a gift that was. And I feel like that is a very positive way to inspire behavior change. A lot of people. I was reading this book by James Sexton, who it's not about food. He's a divorce lawyer, but he brought up this really interesting point that you reminded me of, that even constructive criticism is still criticism. And nobody wants to have another critic in their life, right?
Yeah. Because
not only do they gain a critic when you criticize them, but they lose a cheerleader. And the way to inspire a loved one, I think, to behave differently. I mean, he uses it in the context of, I think, sex and just general in terms of like relational success. Lead with appreciation, right? Not criticism. Like, take a loved one on a walk with you, and instead of saying, you really should walk more. You're too you're just spent all day sitting in front of the TV. You go on the walk, and then you share how much you enjoyed going on a walk with that person.
Yeah.
And you can do the same with food, with your book.
That's just changing the frequency, changing that. And it's, a more efficacious way to get to the outcome that we want. But to do that, Max, it sometimes requires more energy from ourselves. It's not that we can't do those things and speak through the lens of compassion and love and patience when we're not well, but it is harder. And so that's another part of this mission, is like, let's do all this stuff together, because once you start feeling better, you're going to be more able to consistently do things like you just mentioned, which is like, okay, I'm feeling like I want to tell my wife, she's been sitting all day, she needs to get up and go for a walk or whatever the case might be, or tell my husband, he's going to feel terrible if he doesn't get up. Let me reframe this and come in a loving way and figure out a way to, because here's the thing too. We know the people in our lives, we know what motivates them.
Yeah.
And we also know what de-excites them and pisses them off. We tend to go to piss off more frequently because we get lackadaisical, and just like we get to that place where we just want people to do what we want them to do.
Yeah.
That's understandable because we're all human.
Totally.
But another thing that I was targeting was like, here are some strategies to improve your kitchen culture. Here are some strategies to improve and to create a feeling of celebration and connection at the dinner table. Here are some science-backed ways to do that and laying all that out. And by the way, I would be remiss if I didn't. You had asked me that question about opening the fridge, what's in there. So I mentioned just the acai, we mentioned honey, but one other thing, and it's one of my favorite recipes, and we love brunch. We're a big brunch family. But one of the things that you'll see on my counter all the time is sweet potatoes.
I love it.
All right. And
are you about to tell us about the sweet potato protein pancakes?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yes.
I was going to ask you what your favorite recipe in the book was.
Picking my favorite recipe would be like picking my favorite kid. Like, that's hard to do. But this was published in the journal Archives of Pharmacal Research, and it found that the anthocyanins in sweet potatoes were found to exhibit memory-enhancing effects. The researchers believe that it was due to that kind of concentration of antioxidants in that food. What if we can turn that into a delicious pancake?
Hell yeah.
You know what I mean? Just upgrading some of the things that we love, using more whole food ingredients, and also having these benefits like that. Like, you're not going to get this from the hotcakes and sausage I would get from McDonald's breakfast. It's just, again, it's really a celebration of food. It's a celebration of family.
I love it, bro. I love sweet potatoes too. Damn. So freaking good. Do you have any methods for like home cooking if somebody, because I mean, you can't ignore the statistics today that show that, 42% of the population is obese, not just overweight, but obese. By the year 2030, it's going to be literally 1 in 2. Cooking methods for fat loss. Anything there with regard to that? I mean, because obviously when you are avoiding the ultra processed foods, you're increasing the satiety value of your food. That's going to be that's going to lend itself to shifting your body composition in a positive direction, obviously, because you are achieving greater satiety and fewer calories, because we know that minimally processed foods aren't as calorie dense as ultra processed foods. But any other strategies for cooking for fat loss?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the low hanging fruits here is protein ratio, especially for the first meal. And one of the studies that I shared in the book looked at an egg breakfast versus a carbohydrate-based breakfast. And again, even as we're saying this is still going to be based on you, but for the average person that's going, and by the way, in the study it was a bagel breakfast, or eggs, and this was a multi-month study, and they found at the end of the study, the people who were having by the way, same amount of calories. That's why I put the study in there. Same calories.
Wow.
But dramatically different health outcomes. And so the people in the egg breakfast lost significantly more weight, more body fat, not just weight, but body fat as well, and higher production of various satiety hormones, all that stuff. So it's just like, what are some of the things that we can do to make metabolic health easy or fat loss easy? Is making sure that you're getting in adequate amounts of protein for that first meal, especially if you're not about to like train or something like that.
Yeah.
Really going towards protein. But in our culture, it's high carb. It's carbs is the predominant thing just to start the day, right?
Yeah.
You going to the office, or, you're going to a meeting, it's bagels, it's the continental breakfast, yeah. Right? The continental breakfast, the Danishes and the cereals and all this stuff. We just checked into a hotel recently. I was traveling back home to St. Louis, and we're checking in, and then the person at the desk was just like, and we also have free continental breakfast right over here in the lobby. And I saw my youngest son's eyes light up, like, because we love breakfast, we love brunch, but we're talking more like, again, eggs and omelets, frittatas, protein pancakes, those kind of things. But he didn't know that the continental breakfast meant we went, the next day, it's cold cereals, bagels, Danishes, stuff you could heat up in the microwave, that kind of thing.
It's like all bakery crap.
Orange juice, apple juice,
Yeah.
And so that's one, if we're talking about fat loss, really focus on that protein intake. It's the most thermic of all the macronutrients. Your body burns more calories to process protein than it does any of the other macronutrients. And, even as we're talking about kind of dissecting food into parts like this, I always have this like window open in my mind. Like, I don't want people to miss the point, because we can get caught up into that too. Like, just looking at macros or calories, this. But The reality is this: all this time people have been infighting about fats and carbs for years now. Protein has just been like sitting in the back of the bus, just like, bro. You know what I mean? Because when we're talking about things like hormones and hormone health, your hormones are made from proteins. You need these protein building blocks to make you. When people see themselves in the mirror, when I see you, when you see me, we're seeing mainly the proteins you've eaten and minerals. Like those are like the two bulkiest things that you're going to see when you see somebody. Protein is that important. This is the building blocks to make you. DNA to RNA to protein. It's in the gene here, the outcome is proteins, okay? But you have to have the materials to make it. So it's not even just on this kind of like thermic effect, that kind of thing. This is on like protein is super important. Are we actually, has our culture devolved to a place where now, which you know, there's some messages are protein is bad.
Yeah.
Right? So if we're looking at what have humans been doing the longest, what enabled us to create this highly evolved brain that we have and have the health that we had previously to our recent generations, we had more of a protein-centric diet, you know? And this doesn't mean that you have to have a high protein diet. I'm not saying that. But we need to make sure that you're getting in the right amount of protein for you. And for a lot of people, you're not getting enough.
It's also, it's the most satiating macronutrient. Eat more protein. They see this in studies. When you incrementally jack up a person's protein intake, they eat less of the carbs and fat. And ain't nobody walking around today deficient in carbs and fat. Yeah. I mean, we're replete in all of it pretty much. But the protein is a really powerful anti-obesity tool. And yeah, we should appreciate it as such. I think the anti-protein crowd, I mean, they're very fringe. And I don't know if anybody, I think people are starting to really not take those sort of low protein advocates seriously, which I think is a good thing. I think most of the more intelligent people, more well-informed people in the space, we all tend to be, I think these days, on the same page, that protein is really, really valuable, particularly in the context of like today's health problems. Well, dude, this was super fun. Thanks for coming out.
Of course. Anytime, man.
Any chance I get to talk to you, man, I relish. And yeah, man, I'm excited for your book. I think it's going to make huge waves. It's a beautiful book. I got to flip through it, and the recipes are amazing, and you've got your beautiful family there on the cover. It's like a book that you just want to have in your house, you know, like sitting on your coffee table. It's gorgeous. So congrats, because I know, you know, writing a book is hard work, especially a cookbook.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here. Now let's dig a little bit deeper in why food matters so much in the context of Alzheimer's and dementia. A study titled The Potential Role of Gut Microbiota in Alzheimer's Disease, From Diagnosis to Treatment, it details how abnormalities in the gut microbiome can literally contribute to dementia.